Greetings, Friday fans, and welcome to day 17 of our Halloween countdown, our Monsters Run Wild, Mad Scientist Monsters Run Wild countdown this year. The rules are it has to have a mad scientist and he has to create a monster that runs wild. So there you go. Yesterday we looked at the Freak Maker, aka the Mutations, with Donald Pleasance. My man Donald. You know, I love Donald. The thing I like in all the Donald Pleasance movies is when he starts screaming. He has this thing where he always starts yelling, like in Halloween. I shot him 5 times! Love it. Cracks me up. All right, tonight we're going to look at a true classic. You know, we looked at the Hammer Horror series and we looked at Curse of Frankenstein. We also looked at the Universal series, so I wanted to spotlight one film in particular, one that was so influential it deserved to have its own entry, and that is Frankenstein. Colin Clive plays Dr. Henry Frankenstein, a scientist obsessed with the idea of creating life. Together with his hunchback assistant Fritz, played by Dwight Frye, he robs graves for fresh parts to sew together a body to imbibe with life in his castle laboratory. During a thundering storm, he harnesses electricity from lightning and brings his creation to life. The monster, played by Boris Karloff, is huge and strong, yet innocent of mind. When the doctor's assistant tortures him, he escapes and runs off into the countryside, unwittingly causing destruction and chaos. This film is, of course, ultimately based on the Mary Shelley novel from 1818. But it also draws influences from the 1927 stage play adaptation of that novel as well by Peggy Webling, as well as an American adaptation of that play by John Balderson. When I think of Frankenstein, the image of Boris Karloff in that iconic Jack Pierce makeup immediately springs to mind. And that is the perfect word for this film, iconic. It set the mold for so many films, not just Frankenstein movies, mind you, but mad science films in general, for decades to come. Thundering storms, buzzing electrical apparatus, a bubbling beaker-filled lab, the musty damp castle, the hunchback assistant, the obsessed scientist tempting the laws of nature. The list goes on and on. The power of Pierce's makeup can't be overstated. That design is so iconic it is etched into the public consciousness. Karloff's performance sold that design wholeheartedly. Without speaking a single word, he conveyed power, pain, rage, and even vulnerability. Colin Clive is convincing as the obsessed scientist who immediately regrets his ill-fated actions in creating this monstrosity. Mae Clarke plays his fiancée Elizabeth, and Edward Van Sloan plays his mentor Dr. Waldman. Dwight Frye is the actor who continues to impress me on repeated viewings of this film. He is just so good in it. Fritz is a sad being who was undoubtedly mocked and abused by society, and who, given the opportunity, does the same thing to another being, torturing and tormenting the monster with whips and open flames. Kenneth Strickfaden's electrical apparatus in the lab would not only be copied in films going forward, many of the actual devices would be used and repurposed in other mad science movies for decades. This film is, again, in a word, iconic. This was quite possibly the first horror film I ever saw on television as a kid in the early 70s. It just doesn't get much better than the original Frankenstein. All right, Frankenstein. This is the #1 film that influenced me as a kid. This film blew my mind and it set the mold, as I said in the review, for every mad scientist movie to come. I mean, everything started right here. The buzzing electricity, the stormy electrical storm raging outside, the mad doctor obsessed with creating life. I mean, everything. The look of Boris Karloff in this film, the makeup, the Jack Pierce makeup. And make no mistake about it, Jack Pierce designed this makeup. I wrote a Scary Monsters article about this. Some scholars are trying to shift the design credit for some really weird reason away from Jack Pierce and onto director James Whale, and say that he was largely responsible for the look of Frankenstein, and it's just hogwash. Jack Pierce designed this Frankenstein makeup. Boris Karloff said in interviews that he and Jack Pierce spent weeks working on test makeups. He would go in after hours, Jack Pierce would work on it, they would work on the design of it, they would take pictures to Whale, get his approval, come back, work on it more. This was the work of a master makeup artist, Jack Pierce. He had done this type work many times before, and he would do it many times after. This is Jack Pierce's design. That's something that Karloff said over and over again in interviews. So anyway, I'm going to give Frankenstein 5 skulls. A complete, perfect mad scientist movie. There you go. 5 skulls. Let me know what you guys think about Frankenstein. Boris Karloff's performance in this is masterful. I mean, he emotes more sympathy. I mean, that's what makes it so good, is we're all sympathetic for the creature. And that's what a lot of Frankenstein films, there's so many adaptations that have been done over the years, and such what so many of them are missing is that sympathy for the character. I mean, it's fun to watch a Frankenstein monster that's nothing but rage and goes on a rampage and murders and kills and all that. That's fun too, and destroys things. That's a lot of fun. But the ones that make the biggest impact are where you feel sympathy for the creature, and that doesn't happen in any of the movies as much as in the original Frankenstein film. Think about Bride of Frankenstein. You don't feel sympathetic for him as much as you do in this film. I don't. He's definitely a little more devious and got some plans in that one, and that's good. Again, you want to go somewhere and do something different in the sequel, and I get it. And I like Bride of Frankenstein. I like Frankenstein better. Anyway, that's it for tonight, Fright fans. Let me know what you guys think about Frankenstein, and until tomorrow night, this is Dr. Gangrene from the lab saying, be sure and join me back here tomorrow night, and stay mad. Happy Halloween. I'll see you tomorrow.
Is it all right? The neck's broken. The brain is useless. We must find another brain.